Getting to grips. It is high time I sharpened the focus and brought in my subtitle. As I see it, the teacher who currently is doing most damage to propitiation is N.T.Wright. I contend that Wright's teaching on propitiation is unscriptural. In addition, I will also argue that since he uses words and phrases in connection with propitiation, which are popular among evangelicals, but uses them with different meanings, Wright is even more dangerous. Alas, I sense the academe way is in overdrive when it comes to evangelicals and Wright and his teaching on propitiation. Frankly, I am astounded at the way many evangelicals, including Reformed scholars, react to Wright on this subject. I do not deny that Wright is a prestigious scholar, a prolific prodigy no less, and that he has said and written things which are extremely profitable, refreshing, thought-provoking, and challenging. But Wright, it seems to me, is a hybrid, a dangerous hybrid, in that he has mastered the knack of making his teaching popular for a great many people, not least a considerable number of evangelicals. Not me, I hasten to add. But then I am in a minority. I am nothing other than the little boy who, sticking his neck out, pointed at the emperor. Even so, I am prepared to assert that if Wright's teaching on the atonement, in particular on propitiation, continues on its present winning course among evangelicals, not least in the American university and college world, the loss and the consequences of that loss will be immeasurably dire. I've already gone into print over such matters as Wright and conversion, justification, and baptism. Now it is propitiation's turn. That's my view, but alas, as I've said, I find a considerable body of evangelical academe muted at best on Wright and his views on propitiation. If I may mix my metaphors, it is without a hint of patronization that I commend Wright for his willingness to tackle and explode sacred cows. But I make so bold as to say that Wright has got propitiation wrong, and his teaching is dangerous. I know that by taking on Wright's work, I am committing theological, literary suicide, an amateur lightweight in the ring with a professional heavyweight, no less. But even a coward full of excuses with a stick could be the means by which God overthrew the might of Egypt. A determined woman with a tent peg could bring about a rout of Israel's enemies. A self-confessed weakling who lived all his life in fear was used of God when his band of warriors had been drastically cut down in numbers. A stripling who put a pebble in his catapult could slay a giant and deliver Israel. A young man and his servant scrambling up a scarp brought about the defeat of the Philistines. A captive maid could say something to release a field marshal from his skin disease, and a lad's packed lunch could be made into victuals for thousands. Christ took notice of the widow's two mites, and it was Christ who made much of a corn of wheat dying, saying its death was vital. Smallness and weakness are no obstacle to God. Quite the reverse. Let me make it clear. I have no thought of influencing N.T.Wright himself. That would be ludicrous. I might, just might, however, say something that might make some of his countless followers think again. Do not miss my hesitancy. But my real intended readership is, to put it bluntly, the sleeping majority, who, if I read the signs aright, will soon be finding themselves taught by somebody who has imbibed Wright's teaching. Can I say something to awaken them, and awaken them now, before it's too late? That's the burden of this work. Wright is robust in telling his followers to get back to Scripture. Of course he is. His life work has been taken up with the Bible and instructing people on its teaching. But I maintain at the certain key points on propitiation, he signally fails to take his own medicine. Earlier I spoke about seeing the big picture in Scripture. Talk about pots and kettles. Right. The way Christians use these passages is rather like putting in the thumb and pulling out a couple of obvious plums. There comes a time for seeing what the rest of the pie is made of as well. As far as Wright goes, I can only say I find his excellent comment a bit rich. Wright, it goes without saying, is thoroughly conversant with the biblical teaching on redemption. Indeed, he once held it, and held it staunchly, and was prepared to go into print about it. But he has long since moved away from that position. He now claims that evangelicals are pagan in their view of redemption, and Platonic in their view of the hope of salvation. Pagan by believing that God killed Jesus to satisfy his wrath, and Platonic by believing that salvation means going to heaven when you die. Indeed, he now lampoons the biblical view of propitiation in particular, with such sentiments which might be paraphrased as, God is a bully who has to be appeased. God so hated the world that he killed his only begotten Son. Jesus bore God's wrath in your place so that you could go to heaven when you die. In 2013, the Presbyterian Church of the USA wanted to change a hymn by Stuart Townend and Keith Getty from "Till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied" to "Till on that cross as Jesus died, the love of God was magnified." The chairwoman of the committee, Mary Louise Bringle, explained, "The view that the cross is primarily about God's need to assuage God's anger would have a negative effect on the hymnal's ability to form the faith of coming generations." Admirably, Townend and Getty refused this audacious request. But Wright was not shy about where his sympathies lie. When I sing that interesting recent song and we come to the line, "And on the cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied," I believe it's more deeply true to sing the love of God was satisfied. Perhaps should it be magnified? And I commend that alteration to those of you who sing that song. There is a nuance here, a nuance which must not be missed. I do not presume to speak on behalf of Townend and Getty. I speak for myself. When it comes to the wrath and the love of God, it's not a choice, either or. It is both. Wright poses a conflict where no conflict exists except in his and in his followers' minds. On the cross, we see God's love displayed by his plan to propitiate his wrath through the death of his Son, and Christ's willingness to suffer that wrath for that purpose. "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Both, not either or. Wright's theology of the cross is one-legged. A fellow Anglican minister of Wright's, albeit of an earlier generation, Augustus Montague Toplady, saw the issue of propitiation very differently to Wright. "O precious blood, O glorious death, by which the sinner lives. When stung by sin, this blood we view, and all our joy revives. The blood that purchased our release, and purged our crimson stains, we challenge earth and hell to show, the sin it cannot cleanse. Our scarlet crimes are made as wool, and we brought nigh to God, thanks to that wrath-appeasing death, that heaven-procuring blood. And complete atonement thou hast made, and to the utmost farthing paid whate'er thy people owed. How then can wrath on me take place, if sheltered in thy righteousness, and sprinkled by thy blood? If thou my discharge hast procured, and freely in my place endured the whole of wrath divine, payment God cannot twice demand, first at my bleeding shoulder his hand, and then again at mine. Let me make it clear. I am not engaging with Wright over all he had to say about the atonement and its consequences. Nor do I want to give the impression that I disagree with everything he has written on the question. For example, as I have argued elsewhere, according to Scripture, going to heaven when you die is not the believer's hope. No. But in this book, I confine my remarks to propitiation, and with good reason. For the fact is, propitiation, as I have said, is at the heart of the gospel. Propitiation is a key component of the new covenant. The word propitiation itself may appear in only 4 verses in the English Bible, but that must not be taken as an indication of its importance. Since propitiation is at the heart of the gospel, it goes without saying that propitiation is always under attack. The attack might be subtle. Propitiation as a word might be changed to expiation, for example. The attack, however, might be frontal. The biblical principles behind propitiation might be caricatured, ridiculed, and dismissed. But in one way or another, somebody somewhere is trying to get the biblical concept of propitiation out of the Bible, out of the thinking of believers, out of the pulpit, out of books, blogs, and articles. In fact, to jettison it into oblivion. And at present, Wright is in the van of this strife, and his many works are proving exceedingly popular. If I read the runes aright, his views are sweeping aside the biblical teaching on propitiation, and many evangelicals are buying into it. The attack on propitiation is two-pronged, linguistic, and the accusation of paganism. I will tackle both. First, the attack on linguistic grounds.